Alright, Magnolia Fantôme is here 1 week early actually, because the episode that reveals Magnolia Fantôme is actually showing up in the very next episode. So this is pretty much of a spoiler. But anyway, let's begin. Here's the starter. Letia's maid Lotte, of course it's a remake of the original, and Letia's maid is actually going to be the archetype name, so you technically have to run it. And now to the grade 1 wiki power, Letia's mate's Cheris, which has a skill of auto when rolled upon by Letia's mate Lattice. Look at top 7 cards of your deck to choose up to one unique card that is Letia's mate's, along with one normal order, so a total of 2 cards, and discard them. Of course, shuffle your deck. Why it says normal order? That's because there's actually a normal order for the deck. And Crimson Moon is also a normal order, so you could add either or. With the second skill, which sometimes maybe will be used, because if you don't have other options, count rearguard during your turn if your Vanguard is at least a grade 3 Magnolia plus 2k, just in case it's relevant, but you mainly use it for the ride line skill. And then to the grade 2 with tanky power, Letia's maid Lattice, which has a skill auto when rolled upon by at least a grade 3 Magnolia. Choose up to one grade 2 or less Letia's mate from your drop zone and call it to rearguard, and if you did not call, soul charge 1. Very nice, free superior call from the drop zone, and if you don't do that, you can soul charge 1, but you're obviously going to have stuff to the drop zone since you're doing discard for ride line, and because this is Magnolia we're talking about, even if it's lyrical, you're going to be playing a similar playstyle of needing those rearguards to attack from the back row. With the second skill, auto rearguard, when this card attacks, if you have at least a grade 3 Vanguard Magnolia plus 5k into the end of battle, it's there if you need it, but mostly for the ride line. And now we go to the grade 3 with 13k power, Letia mates Magnolia Fantôme, which has a skill. Act Vanguard once per turn, cost Soul Blast 1, choose up to 2 of your rearguards, and they can attack from the back row into the end turn. But if your opponent's Vanguard is at least grade 3, you can then counter blast 1, all your back row rearguards get plus 10k, and then this unit gets a grade plus 1 along with a drive plus 1 into the end of your opponent's next turn. Basically gives 2 back row rearguards some extra attacks and additional power along with it if your opponent's at least grade 3 or going second, along with it becoming a grade 4 with a triple drive. So unlike Stocheo Magnolia, this one can only pick 2 units rather than basically the Stocheo Magnolia choosing all 3 units in the back row. But it still gets triple drive like the Magnolias, but this time as a grade plus 1, referencing probably the grade 4. In which now we go to the Fantôme skill. Auto Vanguard at the end of your turn, costs bind 1 to 2 Crimson Moon cards from hand, or drop, and then choose any number of rearguards that are not Sentinel and bounce them back to the hand. And then into the end of your opponent's next turn, they get this skill each time for the bounce. Count Vanguard, all your units with Letia's mates in the card name gets shield plus 5k. So you bounce back 2, it means that you get this skill twice, which could be very nice since it is a mixture between the original Magnolia and lyrical playstyle of basically back row attack and then having some bouncing, and of course the bouncing in turns with extra shield value, and also clearing up your board so you got some protection. And also in a way, redo on place abilities if you need to, but yeah, there's really not much to explain here since it's mostly just Magnolia playstyle, adding on top of the lyrical style of bouncing. So everything will now just depend on what type of support it gets, especially on how it sustains its field. Which one way is actually through its main order card, Mates With You, which is also a grade 0 normal order and can be played from the drop zone if your Vanguard is at least a grade 3 Magnolia. So you play it by Soul Blasting 1 if your Vanguard's Letia's mate, buying the card, and then into the end turn, you can play 1 additional order, but it cannot be anything but Crimson Moons. So you look at the top 3 cards of your deck to choose any number of them and put them to the drop. Of course, shuffle your deck. After that, choose one of the cards and call it to rearguard if it's Letia's mate that is grade less than or equal to your Vanguard, but put it to your hand if it's a normal order. And then if your Vanguard is at least a grade 3 Magnolia, choose 2 of your rearguards, it gets plus 5k power in turn, but if you Persona Ride during turn, 4 instead. This kind of reminds me of the one order card that Magnolia has where you could use the top 3 to mill and then call from the drop zone because it's also a grade 0, but this is actually pretty nice just because it's a recovery option, and it also sets you up in the drop zone, which is also very huge, with some extra power which is actually needed for the deck, because otherwise you're going to be filled with a bunch of small pokes. In which, before we continue to the main Magnolia cards, here's the generic for the Crimson Moon Searcher if discard from hand during your turn. During the ride phase for either Soul Blast 1 or Engine Blast 3, or when put on Guardian from hand, you can either Counter Blast 1 or Engine Blast 3 to draw. Once again, play it depending on the deck, especially if you have the resources. In which now we go to Letia's mate Tenu, which is a grade 1 with K power, and this goes auto drop. If your Vanguard is at least a grade 3 Magnolia and it was placed during the ride phase, if you do not have a copy of itself in rearguard, you may call it to rearguard, and if you call it, this card goes with 5k power in turn. Recovery is always very nice, especially for a deck that actually needs the rearguards. With the second skill, count rearguard if your Vanguard is at least least a grade 3 Magnolia, it gets intercept and can do it in the back row as well. Back row attack or booster, which can also intercept, which is also very nice. Especially since this Magnolia can only do 5 attacks instead of typical 6, since it can only pick 2 to attack from the back row. And then we go to Letia Mate Siamis, which is grade 2 with tank power, and this goes Act Drop. If you have at least a grade 3 Vanguard Magnolia, cause range plus 2 and call it to rear guard. And the fact that there's no condition for this call is actually pretty strong, so you could actually refill up your board here. In which the second skill is Auto Rear Guard. When this card attacks, if you have at least a grade 3 Vanguard Magnolia, this card gets to 5k power in battle, but if you did, at the end of the turn, retire this unit. It's a free beater that can recover itself, so why not run it? And then we go to Letius Mate Alpine, which is a grade 2 with tank power, and this goes count rear guard during your turn. If you have at least a grade 3 Vanguard Magnolia plus 5k, if your Vanguard is grade 4, aka through its own skill, plus 10k instead. With the second skill, Auto Rear Guard, at the end of battle this unit attacked, if you have at least a grade 3 Vanguard Magnolia, cost Energy Blast 3, retire this unit, Counter Charge and Soul Charge 1. Yes, you do both Counter Charge and Soul Charge, which is actually pretty nice, and it's also a big beater on its own, and it is something that you can reoccur through other means. And then finally to our last card, Letius Mate Daesh, which is grade 2 with tank power, and this goes auto when placed on rear guard, cost Counter Blast 1, look at top cards of your deck equal to the number of Letius Mate's unit including your Vanguard, choose a card from among them and put to your hand. You do not reveal the card and of course shuffle your deck. Basically, on plays, you can do the Counter Blast to look at the top cards of your deck up to the number of Letius Mate units on the board, so up to 6 max, and put one to your hand. So it's placed basically on the early game, where this is the first rear guard you're playing, you're only picking from the top 2. But it's nice that you don't have to show the card, and it could be any card of what you want, which includes PG, so this is actually very strong. With the second skill, Auto Rear Guard, when this card attacks, if you have at least a grade 3 Vanguard Magnolia plus 5k into the end of the battle, and then at the end of the battle, toss, put this to soul, and then choose one of your rear guards and return it back to your hand. Another way to bounce your rear guards back to hand so you have at least rear guards for the next turn. But a choice draw of any type of card that you want from the top cards is very huge, and extra bouncing is always very nice for Lyrical. And here's the secret rare. And then next week we get the Aichi Ride line, which I really hope that we get the boss unit of Alfred, either King of Knights or Alfred early. And so that's it for the new Magnolia Ride line, or Letius Mates. What do you guys think of it? Just like the other Fantôme Ride lines, mostly, they're reimagined of the original one. This time it's basically Magnolia's playstyle mixed in with Lyrical. Although unfortunately mostly locked into an archetype. But I do kind of like how most of the wild beasts got turned into basically wild beast girls. Because a good number of the units got turned into beast girls, and for some reason I kind of like it. But other than that, there's really not much to say here other than it's kind of weird that they decided to reveal this one day early before the episode airs, so it kind of spoils what it does. And it's just mostly a mixed in playstyle of Magnolia with Lyrical. And luckily you don't really need to play the generic cards for Lyrical for this deck, because oh boy, those are going to be expensive. But on that, that's it for this, and see you next time.